tell you my story and how, not as an employee, but actually it's Ray's story, but I'm part of it. So I met Ray. He's my domestic partner, okay? I met him in 2023, and you might see little snippets here and there of him walking with his prosthesis. I'm going to tell you how that happened. So he was a diabetic when I met him, okay? He was in a band, and I was buying a house, and there was a bar behind the house, and I had teenage kids, and wasn't sure what kind of a bar it was. So I would go over there at night, when of course they were the busiest, just to see, were there people fighting in the parking lot and stuff like that. And it turned out okay, so I did buy that house. So anyway, my friend and I, who, she could go with me, we never went anywhere alone, we became friends with the band that Ray was in. And eventually, Ray and I became, we were dating. And, I found out that he was a diabetic because he had asked me to hand him this bag, and it had all his testing stuff in it. It was open. So I came into this relationship knowing that he had this medical condition, and that gives you an idea how long, because it was before I knew him, that he's been suffering with this. So anyway, time goes on, we end up living together and go through all kinds of things and whatnot, and a good bit of time passed, and eventually we ended up here in Georgia. So we've been here for about 10 years, so I guess about halfway through our relationship, right? And he got this sore on the bottom of his foot. Now, Ray, I want you to know this too, because this is kind of relative. He was a flooring guy. He installed carpet and all different kinds of flooring. That's basically what he did. But he did other things too, some kind of handyman stuff. But his specialty was flooring. So, construction work is dirty work. It really is. There's a lot of dust. There's a lot of stuff that accumulates when you have to tear out floors and walls and whatever. Plumbing is dirty. It's just a dirty job. Okay. So anyway, he had this hole on the bottom of his foot. It was a sore, and he was doing everything he could to try to get it to heal, but he didn't have any insurance, and I didn't have any insurance either when we first moved down here. I just last year got insurance, believe it or not. But even when I was working at United Healthcare, out of the whole time that we were living there together, was only 1 year when I was able to put him on my policy, because they didn't have coverage for domestic partners. Okay, so eventually, yeah, he had 1 year, and it was a high deductible plan. We all know how that works, right? So we moved down here. He's not getting his insulin like he's supposed to, and he's got this sore that wouldn't heal, and he won't go to a doctor. And it got worse and worse and worse, and finally, after I don't know how many months it was, but this was in the very beginning, and it was on his left foot, the second toe on his left foot swelled up huge, okay, like really, really huge, and his whole foot swelled up, like the part where your toes connect to your actual foot. And so we took him to the hospital, and they had to amputate his toe. That was the first amputation, okay? And I'm not going to get graphic, but I will tell you that a couple things. This was a progression, and it started on his left foot. He had no insurance. Went to the hospital. They took one toe, then they took 3 toes, then they took these, big toe, and these infections. I'll just say they were disgusting. Okay, you can let your imagination run wild from there. And I don't mean to be mean towards him, but they were gross, okay? And in the middle of all this, he got an abscess on the back of his neck. Now, this is the one, if you watched my little rant, this is the one where I got scared. So it started out, it looked like a pimple on the back of his neck. And it was bothering him, and he asked me to look at it. And that's how I know it was like a pimple, you know, so like the regular, you know, size pimple. So the next day, I go to work, I'm gone all day long, and I come home, and he's in the chair. Now remember, he's only got like part of his foot now. And he's in the chair, and he's not moving, and I'm looking at him, and his color is like gray, you know, and his mouth is kind of hanging open, and I just stopped. Like, I couldn't believe what I was looking at. And I did say, did you die? And it took him a minute to answer, and he says to me, I don't know, you know. It's like he was in agony, and he was sick, and he was really, really sick. And this thing on the back of his neck, that just the night before it looked like a pimple, was now the size of an egg. And you know how a pimple gets a little white dot on it? This thing was speckled with white. Excuse me. And I said to him, I said, you need to go to the hospital. He didn't want to go. I said, you have to go. You know, you're sick. And by now we had learned that when he gets these infections, it's not just local in the place where you see the infection, but it's going all through his whole body. So he's very, very, very sick. And he still doesn't have insurance, right? And in the meantime, even though he's lost parts of his foot, we're still trying to get him on disability, okay? He's not getting disability. And so I take him in the hospital, and every time he goes, he's in there for a week. And this incident with the abscess that he had on the back of his neck was kind of a turning point for me. At that point, I was like, you know, you can't work anymore. It's not a matter of should you work. It's you can't work. The kind of work that you do, you know, you're hot, you're sweaty, you're dirty, you're prone to infections. You cannot risk going to work because it's going to kill you, you know. So that was it. No more work for him. And that's when I became completely responsible for bringing income into the house. And, you know, when people around me, like in my private life, nobody on the internet has said this, but people that I actually know would be telling me, well, he's not a very good provider. And, you know, telling me things like I should leave him. Like, are you kidding me? You know, I might not be married to the guy, but I'm still in a committed relationship. You know, and that's, in my mind, is not how you love somebody. You know, everybody has a bad time, and this was a bad time for Ray. It was really bad. And when I would tell people, you know, what would happen with his neck, and I thought he was dead, and then, oh, you're just overreacting. No, you didn't see what I saw. Like, I really thought he died. And I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, I still think about that sometimes. I mean, he's doing much better now. I'll explain it. But I still think about that. Like, one day I might just come home or wake up and he's gone. How am I going to deal with that? I don't know. I haven't worked that part out in my head yet. So eventually he lost the whole foot. It went like piece by piece, right? And they took his foot off, and we were going to one of the hospitals in the county where we live, because I don't really live in Atlanta. I live in a suburb of Atlanta. And they were starting to not really take as good care of him as I thought he needed. Like, they were doing the bare minimum. So when his neck got infected, I said, we're going to Grady, which is a bit of a drive, okay? We had to go down into Atlanta. It takes about 45 minutes to get there and sit in their emergency room. And of course, it's in the city, so it's a lot more crowded. But Grady Hospital, first of all, is now part of Emory, which is a teaching hospital, so there's that. But also, they take care of a lot of people who are homeless and that kind of thing. So I thought that they might have better resources for somebody who's uninsured and now technically impoverished because it's just my income and I'm not a big earner, right? And so I took him down there and they took care of him and continued to help him with applying for disability. And they got him into some study groups, a couple of them, where they were getting his insulin adjusted, got him back on some insulin. They also taught us some things. So here's a little bonus tip, okay? If you're an uninsured person, and particularly for diabetic, you can get insulin from Walmart. It's not the greatest, okay? It's the 30/70 or 70/30. And it costs you like $25-$30 per vial, and you don't have to have a prescription for syringes either. So as far as dosage, I can't tell you, okay? But I can tell you that you can get that kind of insulin for a modest price without a prescription at Walmart. So we started doing that, and he got his test strips, and we started monitoring him, and you know, they were also giving him in these studies. But you know, one of the other challenges that we had, because he was uninsured, was, you know, he still had to take antibiotics, like strong ones, after he got out of the hospital. And some of these antibiotics are not cheap. You know, we're talking like a couple $100 per pill, some of the pills that they wanted him to take. I mean, now I'm paying for it, you know, in order for him to get it. And I can't afford a $500 prescription. So there was some struggles with trying to figure that out. At one point, they wanted him to come down for this infusion therapy for an IV all the way down in Atlanta. And he would have to go down there every single day, and I'm trying to explain to them, I can't get him down there. We have one car, I have to drive him there, and I have to work, you know, in order to keep a roof over our head. So another little bonus tip, maybe you need to push a little bit, because what they did was they put a port in his chest, and they taught him how to do the IVs, and he did the IVs at home. He didn't have to go down there every day, you know. And if you think about it, that's just another expense. It was a lot cheaper to put a port in and teach him how to do it. And we did have to go down every 2 weeks, because he was on this medication, I think, for a couple months. Every 2 weeks we had to go down and pick up a box of the bags, you know, the IV bags, and took it home. And he just did it. So the next thing that happened was he got a sore on his other foot. And that one wasn't healing. Oh, well, and then also he got a prosthesis to walk, a foot prosthesis, which is ungodly expensive. I think his first one was like $20,000. There's a little short somewhere when we're walking around Walmart. He says that the ones that he has now are about $40,000 a piece. But he got help with that through an organization called Limbs for Life. So he got his first prosthesis, and he didn't have to pay anything for it. But now he, you know, they cut part of his right foot off. Healed, and then he got sick again, and it was infected again. And when he went back in, and I'm only going to Grady now for this, you know, we didn't go back to the other hospital. When he had the second hospitalization for his right foot, he told him to just take the whole foot. He says, I can't go through this again where you take one toe, two toes, you know, like that. And they did. They took the whole foot off of it, and he had complications with that, with the wound not healing properly, which was emotionally very difficult for him because he thought they were going to cut him again, and he just couldn't take it. He really couldn't take it. And you guys don't know Ray, but Ray's not a big crybaby. He's not a softie. He's a tough kind of macho guy, manly man, like crying for babies. And we were outside of Grady. He was in a wheelchair still, and he was so upset. We were going to the car, which is downtown Atlanta. It's a, you know, you gotta walk a little ways to park. And he was acting kind of gruff, and I said, what is wrong with you? And he just looked at me, and his eyes welled up. And I'm telling you, I've never seen this guy cry. Never seen this guy cry. He goes, I don't want to be cut again, you know. And I had to kind of, I'm not as good at this with him as he is with me. I wish I was, because he's really good at this with me, but trying to get him to calm down and just, you know, stop and think for a minute, relax. And somehow I managed to do it, but he didn't get another amputation, and I think that's what he thought was going to happen. They just needed to do some debridement on the wound, which is, you know, if a wound's not healing, what they do is they scrape it. It's painful, but they scrape it, or they may open it up, and that's what she did. She just kind of opened it up. It was an outpatient thing. He didn't have to stay in the hospital, you know, and remove some of the tissue that's not healing properly. So eventually he got his second prosthesis, and he's doing really well now. They finally did approve him for his disability, which, I mean, the ordeal that some people have to go through to get disability is ridiculous. You know, my sister-in-law, she's also disabled. She was born with Down syndrome, and every year, you know, they have to take her to a doctor, make sure she's still got Down syndrome, because she's not going to get better, okay? That is a problem with your chromosomes. You're born that way, you die that way. And Ray's not going to grow a new foot, okay? People do not regenerate body parts, not limbs anyway. Yeah, he's doing better. He's on disability, and since he's got disability, he now has Medicaid, which means he can get his medication. But having Medicaid has its own challenges. I'm very grateful for it, because, you know, I'm still paying for his medication for the most part. I mean, he doesn't make a lot of money on disability, but so it's usually me, plus I'm the one that runs all the errands, of course. And it does help save some money as far as getting his prescriptions and getting doctor's visits. I think he's got like a $2 copay or something. It's almost nothing. And he's doing a lot better. But finding a doctor, very difficult. I had a friend who has a practice. He set Ray up with one of the practitioners in his office, not him, but another one, because I think it would be a conflict for him specifically to see Ray, but this other practitioner in the office was seeing, but she left. So we're going to be driving into Atlanta for his next appointment, which is coming up in a couple weeks. But you know what? You do what you gotta do, and I say he's doing okay, and that is compared to how I know him, not compared to how he should be, because his blood sugar still is not where it's supposed to be. It's still very high. And when he first started going to this practice where my friend is, they were kind of shocked. They were really worried about him and his blood sugar, because it's still high, and Ray must have the constitution of an ox. But anyway, he is he's doing better than he was. We haven't had any out of control sores. He still gets sores. He still gets sores, and sometimes they heal and sometimes they don't. But no new amputations. And just so you know, this was over this period of, it took 5 years to get this straightened out. 5 years. And I really thought I was going to lose him. I really did. But he's here. And had my own scare last year, but I'm okay. And anyway, it's hard. It's really hard when you don't have insurance or a way to pay for your medical care. And it doesn't really seem fair that he went without his medication, and if he had had it, he might have both of his feet. So, anyway, sorry. Okay. You guys are the best. You are the best.